you all for joining today's info session. We are going to get started in just a minute and wait for our attendees to stabilize a little bit. Quick housekeeping note, the chat is disabled, so if you do have any particular questions throughout today's session, please make sure to utilize the Q&A feature that is part of the Zoom webinar at the bottom. And please also scroll through the Q&A section as you are writing your question to see if other people had asked the same question already. If so, please make sure to, instead of writing a completely separate question, just to upvote any existing questions that you have the same question for. But yeah, I think we are good to get started. The numbers have stabilized. Once again, welcome to our 2024 Fellowship Info session for the Coding at 4 Fellowship. Next slide, please. So we're Coding It Forward. We're a nonprofit for early career technologists creating new pathways into public interest technology. And my name is Yu-Yang Zhang. I use he, him pronouns. I am the current program manager for Coding It Forward. And today I'm joined by Rachel, our executive director, and Ariana, deputy director, is not here with us today, but also a member of our team. So for today's info session, here's a quick breakdown of what we will be covering. We'll go through some logistics and overview for the program, share with you some more about the programming opportunities that we offer as part of the fellowship, some alumni experience for folks who have left our program in the previous cohorts and where they are now. Most importantly, the application process for our 2024 fellowship, as well as inviting some of our alumni to return and do a quick Q&A with you all. So with that said, we will dive into the overview of the program, and I'll hand it off to Rachel.
Thanks, Young. So hopefully you all are here because you are slightly familiar with our fellowship, but if not, here's a quick little refresher and overview of what the program mission is. So the Coding It Forward Fellowship is a paid 10-week internship which empowers early career technologists to innovate in local, state, and federal government offices across the country. How we do this is that we partner with, like I just said, federal, state, and local government offices. This is a list of many of our previous host office partners, but it doesn't necessarily encompass all of the folks that we'll be working with this coming year. That particular list will be available to you later in our project matching stage, which we'll get into once we speak about the application later this evening. We do hire folks across 5 different areas of practice. For those of you who might have applied to the fellowship before or are familiar with our work, you'll notice that cybersecurity is a new addition this year, which we are very excited about. So we hire across cyber, data, design, product, and software engineering. And you can only apply to one of these areas in your application, and then you'll have an opportunity to rank kind of which ones you're most interested in. So front end, back end, full stack, for instance, if you're applying to software engineering. And this is a commonly asked question. You cannot submit multiple applications. You can only submit one application. And we highly recommend applying to the area of practice that you have the most experience in. So if you have a lot of software experience, and you think, oh, this might be a great summer to like try out design, we're not going to teach you how to design. So that might not be the best fit. And you'll have a better shot at getting our fellowship if you apply in the area where you have the most knowledge. In terms of what our fellows work on, it's really a wide variety of projects, and you'll hear firsthand from our alumni a little bit later in this evening's presentation, but we've done everything from helping offices understand how they're using AI in different government projects to doing data analysis on how money is being allocated, particularly to help with pandemic effects, to building new user experiences for millions of Americans who are looking for pathways into higher paying jobs through apprenticeships.gov. Young's now going to share a little bit more about some of our summer logistics.
Great. And for those of you, there's a lot of eligibility questions. We will have a couple of slides covering those, so hang tight with those questions. But in terms of the actual fellowship this summer, the dates for the fellowship would be June 10th through August 16th. I don't think the slides are moving, Rachel. Oh, thank you. It will be a 10-week long fellowship, again, June 10th through August 16th. And you're expected to work 40 hours per week during the standard business hours. And this is determined by your specific project and host office. And fellows would be primarily remote in the United States. We do anticipate a limited number of in-person roles available, but those could subject to any local hiring restrictions. So just go in with the assumption that most of the roles that you would be working on would be fully remote. In terms of the eligibility, so you should have authorization to work in the United States, either as a US citizen, permanent resident, or a non-resident, say international students with F1 visa, who's eligible for CPT or OPT. In terms of educational background, you need one of the following. So the first one is if you are a current student or a recent graduate of a traditional degree program, either associate, bachelor's, master's, professionals, or doctoral degree, at an accredited institution in the United States. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the United States. Or if you have a boot camp or certificate background, your program should be at least 3 months or 12 weeks in length, and it is instructor-led and live instruction. And in terms of graduation date, so if you're a current student, make sure that you're currently enrolled for this current term and you're graduating after this current term. Or if you are a recent graduate, we accept students who have graduated no earlier than May 1st, 2023. So if you graduated in spring 2023 or summer 2023, you would be eligible.
Young, quickly before we move on to programming, do you want to address the question about first semester transcripts? Because we're getting a lot of those questions, and I want to make sure that people know what to do in the application.
Yeah, for sure. So for anyone who say you are a transfer student to a different institution, or if you're a master's student starting on, and it's your first semester, you might not have an official transcript with the grades and everything. We do accept unofficial transcripts, so please make sure that you submit for the current degree that you're applying under an unofficial transcript with any in-progress coursework so that we can see that you're currently enrolled in the classes that you're taking. Say if you are a graduate student first semester, first term, but you also want your undergraduate courses to be considered, you're welcome to submit both, but make sure that the graduate one is there for sure. And we'll be evaluating all of the courses that you submit to us.
Great, awesome. I am now going to talk a little bit more about programming, which are part of the benefits of being part of our program, if you will. So we have two different types of programming. The first is professional programming, and through that, we offer opportunities for you to grow as a professional through attending weekly events with leading technologists to learn how they're building products, developing services, and crafting policy. And you'll also have access to one-on-one mentorship and office hours with a member of our team to help support you throughout your summer experience. We also have community programming, and through our community building activities, you get to know a really awesome network of early career technologists, and we'll host things like happy hours, trivia nights, book clubs, and more for you to get to know other fellows and grow together throughout the summer. Being an alum is a really cool benefit of being part of this program. We have an alumni community that is now over 600 fellows who have worked at 60 different government offices. And as you can see on this slide, we're also really proud that our alumni network and our cohorts represent the diversity of the citizenry that they serve, meaning that a majority of our cohorts have been women or non-binary individuals, as well as people of color. And we think it's really, really critical to this work to make sure that the people building products for citizens across this country are reflective of the people they're working for. As part of our alumni experience, you also receive a ton of support from our team that goes beyond just the 10 weeks of the program, including one-on-one job and networking support, participation in social events. We just hosted our kind of fall networking mixer this past weekend, and we'll be having a few more next weekend in cities across the country. We do things like book clubs and resume reviews. Really, you name it, our team is here to help you for as long as you are interested in engaging with our community. And I know a lot of folks are always curious about, okay, I'm working in government for 10 weeks. Where can that lead me in my tech career? What does this mean for next steps or full-time opportunities? Well, there's no such thing as a return offer with this program. We do help many of our alumni stay in the social impact or government space. And in fact, 50% of our alumni now work in social impact or government full-time. This slide is just many of the different career options that our alums have explored past the 10 weeks of our program, from, like I mentioned, working in government and social impact, to pursuing really amazing graduate school programs, to pursuing careers in the private sector with the intent of building their skills and coming back into government. So the options are limitless with working in public interest technology.
Great.
And
So, sorry, we'll now go into the application process and let you know what you need to do to get started. So the first thing is the timeline for our program. Sorry, Rachel, I think the slides are stuck. Thank you. So the timeline for the program, the application is open as of today. So definitely check us out on our website later on after the info session. The application will be open for 2 weeks, and it would close 2 Sundays from now on October 29th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. After you apply, we would screen and review your application, and we select a handful of applicants to move forward to the assessment process, which would take place sometime in mid-November. And the dates are TBD, depending on how fast we get through everyone's applications. But we do anticipate that to happen sometime in mid-November. And then from the assessment, we'll review those and move on and select a few applicants to move forward to be able to rank positions available in our database. So we're still also finalizing the final list of positions. So we currently don't have, what are the exact numbers for each area or for which agencies or host office. But at that time, if you're invited, you have a complete list to be able to review and rank your preferences. After that, we'll match applicants based on your backgrounds, experiences to the requirements of the project, and you'll be invited to interview directly with those host offices. This will happen in January, and we anticipate sending offers after those interviews in January and February. In terms of the application itself, again, it is due on October 29th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. You fill out some of your biographic information, your name, your institution, graduation date. You would have the opportunity to submit your resume and transcript. And again, for transcripts, we have very detailed instructions, both for bootcamp and certificate graduates who may not have a traditional transcript, or for those of you who need to submit multiple. The detailed instruction is available on the application form itself. And you also then submit 3 short answer questions, which are designed to let us get to know you a little better and make sure that you are representing who you are genuinely and why you want to make an impact this summer. In terms of some of the qualities that we're looking for, we definitely want to look for people who have technical expertise and skills in problem solving. And you understand, as someone who's working in this technical role, that there isn't always a clear path forward, and you're always eager to find different ways to forge new paths, find different solutions to tackle different issues. We want to look for candidates who are committed to making a difference. And you are here to build products and services on behalf of the American people. And you are someone who is creative and collaborative. And a lot of times you would be working in a team setting with different staff and officials. And we want you to be able to be part of that team effectively. In terms of the review criteria for our application process, we are definitely screening for your technical abilities. Make sure that you show those technical abilities through some of your past projects, portfolios, GitHubs, and examples. So don't just name drop them. We want to actually make sure that you can demonstrate those. And make sure that you indicate some of the top skills in your application. And given that this is a rather technically challenging role, we do not recommend those who might not actually have a lot of previous experience, projects, or examples to show to apply for our program, as a lot of times those are the first things that we look for in the application. We want to also screen for adaptability. You're someone who's comfortable navigating ambiguity, you enjoy problem solving, and you know how to work with a variety of people. And some of the things that are less important, we don't really care too much about the name of your institution, how prestigious it is, not too much on your grades or GPA, and we do not focus on your high school accomplishments. And here we actually have some resources to get you started with the application. Rachel, I think next slide, please. Thank you. So some resources to get you started. First of all, check out our blog on Medium. It contains a lot of stories from our past alums, as well as AMAs, Ask Me Anything, question and answer style blog posts for you to learn more about our program. Check out our social media and GitHub. And someone, I think, in the Q&A asked about what are some of the project examples. GitHub for Coding It Forward will be a wonderful place to look for, as it contains repositories of past presentation slides from our fellows. So definitely check it out to see what our past fellows have worked on and what you could anticipate this summer. We encourage you to stay in touch with us, even if you decide to apply, not apply, or deem ineligible. Stay in touch with us by subscribing to our newsletter. And we do have 2 upcoming office hours, and these are more kind of technical issue office hours for the application process. So if you do run into any issues, have questions about a particular document, definitely stop by at our office hour listed on the website. It is not one meant for advice, like, how should I write this essay? Can you read my resume? We won't be answering those type of questions. But if you do run into issues that are more technical in nature for the application process, definitely stop by for our office hours. I'll pass it right back to Rachel.
Awesome. Well, that was it for today's presentation, but we do have some very special guests who are with us this evening to share more about their experiences as fellows. And we'd love for you all to engage with them by submitting your questions through our Q&A feature. I just ask that you preface it with alumni so that I know it's a question directed towards them instead of you, Young, or myself, so that I can make sure I can ask your questions to them. So with that being said, I'm going to have our 3 awesome alums introduce themselves. I'm only going to keep this slide up for a moment so that we can see their faces better. But we have Ashani, Mahima, and Gracie here tonight with us. So Mahima, if it's okay with you, I'll hand it over to you to kick us off and share your name, your fellowship year, where you worked.
Sure, sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Mahima. I use she, her pronouns. I was a product management fellow, not this past summer, but the past summer, so 2022. I worked with the city of Charlotte, specifically in the Smart Innovations Technology Department. And my kind of main project for the summer was helping to develop a public Wi-Fi finder feature for the city. They'd recently gotten a grant and they created a lot of public Wi-Fi spaces in the community, but it was a priority to make sure that people knew where to find them. The experience was really rewarding. I did the fellowship right after I graduated college. I went to USC and I studied industrial and systems engineering. I will hand it over to Gracie to talk about her work, her fellowship.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gracie Gallagher. I use she, her pronouns. I was a fellow this past summer working in Arapahoe County, Colorado, which is part of Denver, goes out east towards Kansas. So I was a user research fellow. So I was working with their digital services team and their IT department. So my project was focused on a recent House bill that was passed in Colorado, mandating that all government agencies meet a certain accessibility standard for all of their digital services. So not just their website, everything like down to kiosks. So I did a lot of internal research with their teams, user interviews with both residents and county staff, surveys, developed an affinity map, and then just some next steps in terms of them going through this huge endeavor and making sure that everything is accessible. But yeah, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Aishani.
Hi everyone, my name is Aishani. I was a fellow all the way back in 2020, the summer of COVID. And I worked for the United States Census Bureau as a data science fellow. And my work was predominantly related to address standardization and matching work across the different database systems that the census had. And so they had an existing framework that was entirely in Fortran, a beautiful language that is just a little outdated. And so I was kind of working on replicating or kind of updating that whole system and making it, in Python, and experimenting with different algorithms like NLP algorithms for standardization and matching, and then also different database softwares to kind of facilitate that process as well.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing a little bit more about yourselves. So we're already getting off the great questions for you all. The first of which is, what was the most memorable moment during your fellowship? I think that could maybe be like professional or personal, if there's a particular moment that stands out to you, or maybe something that was really meaningful to you about being a fellow with us. Give a second to think. I know it's like a big, big to do.
I have two answers. So memorable was definitely the DC orientation. Being able to do the scavenger hunt with my team and run around all the different monuments, doing all these like dumb videos and fun photos. That was really great to get to meet everyone in person. Professionally, I thought it was really great. At the end of the fellowship, I was able to do the showcase of my work, and they were able to use my presentation to present to their board of directors to really advocate for more funding for accessibility. And I heard when they presented it to the board, they were taking notes on all the data. And so that was really nice to hear and really rewarding to see that impact.
My memorable moments are also along the same lines as Gracie's. I think the final presentation was really cool because I remember the first day and talking about the project and immediately thinking I was not qualified. I definitely experienced like imposter syndrome on the first day. And then so to come to the final presentation to talk about all the work we'd done was just really cool to see how much I'd actually helped in those 3 months, especially because they definitely needed someone who was familiar with product management practices to come onto the team. And then my second most memorable moment was just my manager and I built up a really good relationship, and we started meeting regularly outside of the fellowship. And so I think that's always just one of my memorable moments, is just the fact that I have a really great personal and professional relationship with somebody who's part of the fellowship, especially as I still have interest in public service and I still want to go back into it. And so to have that kind of relationship throughout my career, especially early on, is really important to me. And I'm really grateful that the fellowship resulted in that relationship.
I think my most memorable experience during the fellowship was actually, so 2020 was a census like year. So it was just really cool to be working for the Census Bureau, like while they were, actually doing the thing. And so we got to see, we had a lot of talks where we were able to like talk to people like at the helm, which was really cool. And I think that's something that I'll really remember. Because I really appreciate them like taking the time during what must have been like incredibly hectic, to like talk to us about like and actually like value our ideas as young technologists. Like it wasn't just some ragtag group of kids. They really valued like our expertise when we were in these conversations. And I think beyond that as well, I I'm like still really close friends with a lot of people from the fellowship, and it's been like 3 years. And it's been really like that's been really beneficial. And I think like that was facilitated largely through a lot of the programming done by Rachel and Chris and Yu Yang, and like things like book clubs and stuff like that. And so it really also continued to shape my career trajectory. Like I didn't mention this when I in my introduction, but I stayed in the civic tech slash gov tech space since my fellowship. So that I think is something that I would say is the most memorable.
I love that each of your experiences were so different, yet you had a lot of similarities in terms of like what you found meaningful through, I think, your work experiences. But I think it also speaks to like how many different facets of this program are and how you can kind of make the best of it, you know, depending on what you're most interested in, which I think is really cool. So my next question for you, speaking a little bit more about the work experience, is there's quite a few people curious, sort of like, what does the day-to-day look like? Like, were you working on a team? Like, did you have a manager? Were you like the only person who knew how to do your technical thing? Were there other people? Kind of all of the above about like the workplace experience.
I can go first and talk about my team. So I did have a manager who I worked really closely with, and I was also in the really unique position of having another fellow on my team. They were a graphic design fellow, so our work wasn't overlapping, but it was really nice to have that support system. In terms of the day-to-day work, I had a couple larger projects, and I specifically wanted to join this office because I wanted to learn from my manager who had a lot of experience. It's just you'll find that resources are really limited in government offices. And so oftentimes when you're coming in, it's because they really need your expertise and your experience. And they have a lot of work that they want you to get involved in kind of right away. And so in terms of experiences, it felt like I was coming in kind of as a subject matter expert to really lend a hand where there weren't enough people thinking about specific problems using specific product management practices. But luckily, my manager and I, like I said previously, had a really close relationship. So a lot of it was routine one-on-ones with them after, because you're also joining only for 3 months. There's no way you're going to get all the context that you need. And so I really did rely on my manager and my teammates who were full-time employees at the office to get a lot of that context that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
I feel like I would say pretty much everything that you just said. I think, again, you are being hired as a subject matter expert, but you can certainly rely on your supervisors to provide that context that you need, and really try to figure out within the first couple of weeks what they actually want from you, and see how you can deliver within the time frame that you have, and be sure to set realistic expectations as well, since you only have 10 weeks. Another thing that I would add is we didn't really, I think someone mentioned that they're really close with their mentor. So I know Coding It Forward offers a mentorship program, and I was matched with this incredible mentor that was able to help me really carry through my project. She had a lot of great insights. And so if I ever felt lost, I had access to a professional that did exactly what I do to really give me advice and fine tune my project. So that was helpful when I was feeling a little bit lost some weeks, but it all turned out great in the end. So yeah.
I also resonate with what both Mahima and Gracie said. Actually, when I was placed with my project, I had another fellow working with me in our group, so that was really good to rely on, and we're still like really close friends to this day, which has been really nice. But I think like again, yeah, echoing like the sentiment that you are typically one of the only technical people in the room when it comes to your computer science skills. But like, I think that's a really big takeaway at the end of the day is like, I was working with predominantly demographers, geographers, sociologists, etc. And I think it's like easy to think of yourself as like, oh, well, I'm the one who knows what's going on in the room because I have the computer science background. But then you like show up and realize you actually don't know anything. And so like I think rather than being like, oh, well, like I'm the one that has all the knowledge, like you have to go into it with the attitude of I have so much to learn about technology in like a different space and a non-traditional like software engineering space. And so yeah, you're never really alone. There's always people that you can reach out to, and also like obviously depending on the nature of your work and the privacy and security of it, you can also talk to other fellows because a lot of times a lot of people will be working on kind of similar stuff across different agencies or even within the same agency. So there's a lot of support from that end. And yeah, that was like the day-to-day was mostly with me and my other fellow, but we all had really regular meetings with my supervisor. And I think as with any remote role, like your communication and your proactiveness really makes or breaks how smoothly you're able to get to your milestones and facilitate whatever your team needs to get done.
Awesome. I think this was touched on a little bit in your answers, but I think there are two different questions about this. So I wanted to make sure it was addressed. People are kind of curious about the restraints or like challenges of working in government. Was there anything when it came to software design that affected your workflow? And did you have any sort of like go-to resources or bureaucracy hacks, as we like to call them, that made your summer smoother? And the second part of that question is just sort of like, what tools did your office provide for you, if any?
Yeah, so challenges in government. If you've ever had a previous internship or in general just done work in your space, you'll realize that things take a lot more time in the government. It just moves a lot slowly. It's just the nature of it, and you have to get buy-in from a lot of people. And I think the biggest challenge for me was coming in and proposing all these ideas and struggling to get that buy-in because these are not stakeholders who speak the same technical language as you, right? They are not coming from the same background. They are coming from a background of having worked in the government for a really long time, but they're probably program supervisors or project supervisors. And I think the best thing that you can do in those positions is just really understand what matters to them, like what they really care about and the impact of your project, because they're not going to understand the nitty gritty. They're not going to understand like the actual work, right? Because that's not their job to do it, but they need to be able to understand why you did the work in the first place and what benefits it'll have. And I remember going to a meeting, being really confident about it and talking about my plan and getting a lot of questions and a lot of pushback. And so the hardest thing for me was getting that stakeholder buy-in. But once you really start to understand who your stakeholders are, I think it gets a lot easier. And the way I kind of navigated that was just talking to my manager. My manager kind of sat in a place where they understood the other stakeholders and their perspective, but also she'd been seeing my day-to-day work, so she could kind of play that bridge and act as that bridge and talk about what they really cared about. And then in terms of resources provided, I think the best thing about the fellowship is just how much your network grows. I met so many other people at the city of Charlotte. And so a lot of my resources were just going and asking other people for help and getting other perspectives. And then I also think I just fairly used like our current community as a resource. I had regular calls with other product management fellows throughout the fellowship. And I think that was the best part, just getting to hear about the work that they were doing and how it overlapped and what was different, and also getting their perspective. So I'm also a big people person. So I prefer talking to people and getting help in that way.
I will say, since I have the kind of local government perspective, that there wasn't like a ton of bureaucracy hacking that I had to do. It was just kind of go for it. But I did have a bit of a tricky time when it came to study recruitment. So, you know, I wanted to have a good number of people that I was going to do user interviews with, enough for the survey, getting people to fill things out, you know, care about your research topic. It's a little tricky. I think the thing that worked best for me was using the relationships that my supervisor had already built up. So who she knew some people that were really good to talk to. I made sure any of my recruitment emails are very personable. Mentioned if I knew anything about that person, I'd try to mention it in the email so it wasn't too overly formal. And one thing that was really nice is sometimes you don't see the immediate impacts of your project. So the fellow that was in the Arapahoe County office the year before me actually put together this study recruitment list for constituents, and I was able to use that. So I was able to use her list that she put together to recruit for more interviews in the future. So even if you don't see the impact right away, a future fellow might thank you so much for it. And then I think one of the other questions was about like specific tools that my office provided. So not a whole lot for user research, but we had Microsoft Teams. They had like a survey building tool called Open Forms, but really it wasn't super advanced on my end. So I'll let some more of the technical people answer the tools part.
I guess I'm supposed to be the technical person. I totally forgot the first half of the question though.
If you could just kind of talk about like sort of like
Hacking the bureaucracy.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
challenges, the workplace environment, like how did you get around some of the like quirks of government, if you will?
So I worked at a big federal agency, so I guess that that really hit home because the census, and on top of that, they had so much going on. And so yeah, there was a lot of issues. I know like people have also been asking questions about like clearance and background, and so like that definitely like plays a factor in what type of data you can get access to and stuff like that. That was a huge challenge for me personally, like when I was working there, was getting access to the data that I was supposed to be like doing this whole project on. And so that required a lot of being resourceful, like, okay, you don't have access to um, the exact data that you want your final project to be on, but in the interim, while you're waiting for that access, can you try and make a synthetic data set? Can you find some public data that's out there that has been used for similar machine learning projects and see what you can do to utilize that or tweak it? So it requires, I think, some level of resourcefulness, and like I think it again really does depend though on like what agency you're placed at, but that is I think a thing with government, that and I think like also with like tools and technologies that they're also not as acquainted with, you'll probably face some sort of hesitancy, or you might not be able to access something because it might not be approved. So I think the name of the game is always finding alternatives, finding workarounds, and I think like the more willing you are to, take that route as opposed to like pushing you have the best idea and trying to convince everybody that it's gonna like force through, like the more you're able to like get a plan B, C, D down, the easier your time will be. And I think, yeah, in terms of tools like that, I think kind of ends up speaking to the first question where it was like, yeah, we wanted to use kind of advanced, I guess, I don't know, maybe it's not even that advanced now, but we thought it was advanced to like trying to incorporate like MongoDB into some of the database frameworks into the government, and we faced like pretty staunch pushback because that wasn't an approved technology, but it was just more of a opportunity for us to problem solve around that. And so it's like you get a lot of support from your team, but you might not get like the kind of technical up to date tools at your fingertips that you may find in another place. But it's just an opportunity for you to be resourceful and creative.
I like that answer, making a positive out of a challenging situation. But I think all around, like you heard in each of their answers, the tools sort of vary, I think, based on like which office you're at. We have literally city, county, and federal represented on this call right now. So the types of tools and resources, et cetera, really just differ, I think, all around. But interesting to hear like similar challenges despite which level of government that you're working in. I do want to be respectful of our alumni's time this evening, so I'm just going to ask them probably one last question, and then Yu Young and myself are happy to do a rapid fire with whatever is left in the Q&A, and then stay on even a little bit after the hour, since I know we got started a little late if folks have additional questions. So my last question for you all is just kind of what advice do you have for folks in this application process? We've been receiving a lot of different questions about your backgrounds and experiences, but I always kind of hesitate to ask that question because I don't think you can compare across resumes, particularly when we've had over 600 alums. So instead, I'd love to hear more just like from your perspective, what do you think helped make you stand out? What do you think is really important in our application process?
This is a program and a fellowship that I've been interested in since I started college, since I found out about it. And so I think I would like to think my interest and my passion for both the program and public service in general is kind of what helped me have a leg up. There are hundreds of thousands of internship programs out there. This is really specific. You get to do such cool work and you get a level of access that a lot of other people don't get. And I think just being really clear about why you're interested in this space will really help, because I think that's just a really important part of it, right? Like these offices want to work with people who also want to work with them, and they want that kind of shared level of passion. And so I think as long as you take the time to really express interest and passion about the space and about the work, I think that's the best thing that you can do personally.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important, I saw a lot of questions about like the assessment. So I would just say read through the prompt very carefully, read all parts and make sure that your answer reflects all parts. And you can do it pretty concisely, but just take your time to make sure that you're leaving space to answer every part of the question. And then I would just say trust yourself and really just know your strengths. So for me, I knew I had a deep passion for accessibility. I had no idea there was an accessibility role when I was applying. So it was really fortunate that I was able to find a match, but I was upfront about that from the beginning. Know what your passions are, how it can apply to government. And I think that will shine through in your application.
Well, I love both of those answers. I truly do think that this is a unique internship kind of application, and that we really believe it's important to be authentic. And I did not ask them to say that, I promise. We had no prep for that question. But I do really believe that authenticity is why we have just such amazing fellows and folks who are really passionate about doing this work. And I know a lot of job applications can feel repetitive and scary, and you just feel like you're submitting your resume into a void time and time again. And I promise you, every single application that we get gets read by not just one real human, but multiple real humans who are very invested in learning more about you. So to the extent that you can share who you are, I really love both those answers. Awesome. Well, that is going to conclude, our alumni panel for this particular evening. But again, thank you so much to the three of you for sharing your perspectives this evening with our audience and folks who are on the line. I know there are still many of you. We're going to get through as many questions as we possibly can. And if we don't get to everything, we'll also give you our recruiting email at the end of the call. Thank you again to our alums, and we will start doing some Q&A.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Gracie. Awesome. And I know you young's already been answering and typing away in the chat or Q&A a lot of answers, but I do just want to go probably from most upvotes to least right now, just because I know there are so many that are still pending. Cool. So I think the first question, how often are undergraduates selected, and are there any alumni chapters? I'll answer those in two parts. So the first, in terms of the composition of our cohorts, I would say, generally speaking, a majority of our cohorts are undergrads. We don't have like a particular threshold that we're looking to fill, but I'd say the ratio has been like 65-70% undergraduate over the last few years. So it is pretty heavily undergraduate, and that's because we started as an undergraduate only program. And I think that theme has just stayed pretty consistent in the work we do. The second part of that question about alumni chapters, I wouldn't call them chapters per se. When you're an alum, you join our Slack community, and there are tons of different channels in our Slack, everything from practice area like software engineering, data science, but also to location. So like I was saying earlier about our community programming, we've been having meetups this fall in different cities. I'm hosting one this weekend. Yu Young hosted one last weekend for people who live in different cities across the country. So not a formal chapter per se, but definitely lots of opportunities to engage with other alums. Cool. The next question looks like, why is the internship primarily remote? there are many reasons why it's still remote. I'd say a big one though is that actually a lot of the government offices we work with are still remote. Folks are not necessarily going into the office 5 days a week, and we didn't want fellows to feel like they had to report to an empty cubicle and not have anyone around them to help. So instead, making the program remote made a lot of sense just in terms of how government offices are currently operating, or at least our partners are operating. With that being said, we are reintroducing in-person opportunities like we mentioned. They will be limited this year just because there aren't many of them, but we are kind of pushing for different avenues for folks who are interested in in-person work. The other big thing about this being remote is it's an equity issue. We recognize, we were students not too long ago, like how expensive it can be to just relocate for 10 weeks. You shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars over the course of the summer to live in a city that you're not familiar with. And so we wanted to also make sure that this program was accessible to folks who might not necessarily have the financial means or even the desire necessarily to relocate for the summer. So that's another big factor for us, is to make this as equitable of an opportunity as possible. Just trying to get through some of the alum questions that we unfortunately did not have tons of time for. I will say the top question is asking if alums mainly work by themselves. And no, I would say oftentimes they're the only intern or fellow on the team, but you have a manager that you meet with directly one-on-one multiple days per week. You are part of a larger team that provides you support and feedback and advice. And then you are also part of our community. So again, our goal is not to just send you to a cubicle off into a corner for the summer. You are engaging with your team and have a ton of support systems, but you won't necessarily be working directly with another fellow.
There's a question from Not Matched. So the matching process, if you get to that round, you'll receive more information about what the matching process looks like. But your application does not carry year over year. So we would not consider your previous year's application for this year's or this year's for next year, just because the position pool is always different every year based on different partners that we work with. And those projects also change year after year. So the requirements are going to be different. So even if you say are qualified for a particular position and you're matched to that role might not actually exist next year for you to continue to be matched to. So we do not consider your application year across year.
Also, I'm seeing just like a lot of questions about eligibility stuff in terms of whether certain degree programs are eligible or graduation years. All of that information is on our website, which will be emailed to you. If you have any confusion after reading through our website, it's also on the slides that we'll send out to you. Please feel free to email us. We are more than happy to assist you. But I think once you have a chance to dive into the eligibility requirements, it'll be pretty clear whether or not you qualify for the program. A lot of questions about like projects, portfolio tips, etc. I always recommend that, to the extent that it is possible, and like Yu Yang said in our presentation, like you should show your work. It's help, you know, if someone says, hey, I know how to use Python, but we can't see any examples of how you've coded in Python or a project that might have used Python, it's not as helpful for us to just take someone at their word when reviewing their resumes. It's more helpful to be able to dig in to the materials and understand the extent of your knowledge and how you've contributed to different projects. This goes the same though across all disciplines, not just software, but I know someone asked about product and design specifically. I think in those cases, it's really important to provide visual examples, walkthroughs, walk us through your process, help us have a clear understanding of different design decisions that you made, how you contributed to a project, things like that. So we definitely value project-based experiences, whether those were part of a class, a previous internship, a research project. Folks often ask about submitting research papers, and I do tend to discourage that just because we don't have the time to unfortunately read a really long research paper. But if you want to provide like an excerpt that's like a page, that could work. But really, we're looking for more kind of like interactive opportunities to get to know your work.
There's a question about the application office hours. So again, you're probably going to be seeing me again during those office hours. It is going to be more of a technical help, drop by, help desk type of situation. It's not meant to be an advice. There's not going to be any structure, and it's just going to be a waiting room. I'll admit one at a time. You know, you're still encourage you to send us an email if you do have any questions or concerns. You do not have to wait until that particular sessions. There are certain things that might be easier to address on a face-to-face basis than sending, you know, a 20-paragraph email, and things that we can resolve in like a couple of minutes on the call, then definitely drop by. But other than that, there isn't a set structure for the session.
There's another question about the portfolio and how you can provide passwords. That's part of the application. So there's a place for you to input passwords. If you have a repo that is private, we unfortunately will not be able to view it. So we don't have, because there are so many different people who look at applications, there's not like a shared account or system to look at repos. So instead, I recommend trying to move that over to like a privately hosted website, or like dropping your code file into a Google Drive and sharing that link, something like that.
Someone asked about on the fence applying to certain rules of different areas. I would say apply to the area of practice that you are most comfortable and have the most technical skills in. Back to what we've shared earlier during the presentation, we're looking for people who are technically capable in a certain area. So it is to your advantage to apply to the area that you feel more comfortable in.
So again, lots of questions about the portfolio piece. Like, it can be anything. It does not have to be a GitHub. It can be a website. It can be a link. It can be literally anything, as long as we can view it on the internet. So this isn't meant to be like a literal prescription about what you should or shouldn't do. It's meant to just be a suggestion of like what our team is looking for, which is experience, or not demonstrated ability, I would say, in terms of how you're able to showcase your skills. Great. Well, I think we've gotten through the bulk of our questions, and I do want to be respectful of people's time, since I know we just hit the hour, actually, as I said that. So 2 quick announcements before you hop off. One, applications are open. They open today, which is very exciting, and they are only open for less than 2 weeks. So they're due October 29th. We will not be offering any extensions on that date. So please, if you are interested in applying, which I hope you are after our info session today, please go ahead and do so. I'll drop the link in the chat in 1 second. And then also, there's a ton of information on our website about our programs. FAQ section is really robust and answers a lot of frequently asked questions that like people actually send us. We try our best to keep that updated. So please go ahead and review that in depth. And then feel free to email us as well if you do have any other questions. There's a form again on our website for you to contact our team directly. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, and reach out with any of your questions. Our team's really excited to get to know you a little bit better. Again, please be genuine in your application. Please review it. There's quite a bit to it in terms of content. It doesn't take that long, but we just have a lot of descriptions to help you through the process. So please be sure to give those a good look. And let us know if you have any other questions. Our team is here to help. And again, applications are due October 29th. So thank you everyone for your time this evening. And we look forward to learning more about you very soon. Take care.